All right. Hey guys, Mr. Kyle, Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. This is percent problems. It's a worksheet from Khan Academy, likely one that you have for homework or for classwork or both. Let's talk about how to do this. This is actually going to be a pretty quick one. All the questions are pretty much the same. All you have to do is kind of crack the code on what they're asking, okay? So when they say what percent, right? What percent? That translates into, well, either X or maybe just, whatever your favorite letter is. So, choose a letter. I'm going to be real basic and just use X here. And then they say of, right? Of means to multiply. So I'm going to put a little dot here for multiply because, if I put an X, it would look like another variable. And then, of course, numbers are just numbers, right? So there's no need to interpret those. So 29 is, well, 29. And then the word is, which is also a little on the nose. If I say is, it just means equals, right? Equal is. And last but not least here, 3 is just 3. So it's really that simple. You look for the what percent, that's X, or whatever letter you want to use. Of means multiply. The numbers mean the numbers. And is means equals. That's it. The only difference in all of these questions is that some of them are going to be in a different order than others. So let's go ahead and look at this. X times 29 equals 3. Okay, well, the opposite of times is divide. So I would divide both sides by 29 in order to solve this. Okay, that gets rid of that. And then I have X is equal to 3 over 29. Okay, so, and that's actually the answer. Now it says round to the nearest tenth or a tenth of a percent. So I'm going to break out a calculator here because I don't know what 3/29ths is off the top of my head. 3 divided by 29 is about 0.1. It says tenth or tenth of a percent. So 0.1. So if x is 0.10, actually we need to take it out to 3 decimal places because they said nearest tenth of a percent. If x is, this is really the only tricky part. If x is 0.1, then we would change it to an actual percent because a decimal is not a percent. A percent can be a decimal, but if this is a decimal, there's no percent sign, then it's, well, just a decimal. In order to change it to a percent, we have to move it over 2 spaces, and it becomes 10.3, and that's why I went out to 3 spaces on that decimal instead of just 1. Initially, I was going to go 1, and then I was looking back at what they want to check to make sure we're giving them what they want, and they want a percent, right? And we can check it with the answers here. Boom, 10.3%. Okay, so that's the answer. Oh, and I forgot to put a little percent sign here. That is the answer. So honestly, the setup, not as hard as maybe just remembering to change it to a decimal and round it to the right number of decimal places. I think that was just as difficult as setting it up, if not more. So let's go ahead and look at the next one. It's going to be pretty much exactly the same. What percent, kind of bled into the of here, what percent of, and then we have 33.5 is 21. So this is actually exactly the same as the one before it. It's going to be what percent, so x, of 33.5 is 21. So we divide by 33.5. 33.5. And then we just do that in the calculator. Now, you can either change it to a percent first. So I get 0.6268 blah, 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 blah. I can either move the decimal place over 2 spaces first and then round to 1 decimal place, or I can round to 3 decimal places and then turn it into a percent. So I actually did that in question number 1. I said, okay, well, let's round to 3 decimal places, 627, and then change it to a percent, 62.7%. Okay, so I just did that twice, that kind of way twice. Let me show you what the difference is, what I'm talking about in the next question. And you can decide for yourself which one you like better. But it's really just kind of a preference thing. What percent? And actually, I'm just going to use blue. Of 55 is 34. What percent of 55 is 34? So we divide by 55. 55. And then x is equal to, now if I move the decimal place over, it's going to be, so this is 0.6268 blah 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 blah, right? So not really rounding, I just kind of chopped it off at a certain place, but it keeps going, right? Then x is really equal to 62.6 blah blah blah. Move it over 2 spaces to the right. And then if I round to the first decimal place, the second decimal place, the place after the one we're supposed to round to, tells us whether we round the 6 up or keep it the same. 8 is 5 or greater, so it rounds the 6 up to a 7. And that is the answer to that. Okay, this one's a little bit different, but again, it's just, you just go, okay, 41% of 78 equals what? Right? So actually, there's no solving here. 41% of 78 is what? Okay, so don't try to multiply the 41 and the 78. You're just going to get another, like a percent number. So I guess you could, but then you'd have to make sure to change it back into a decimal because x is not supposed to be a percent here. You don't normally have 2 different percents in one problem if you're just multiplying or dividing or whatever, right? So that would be kind of weird, like 41% of 58% of 32% of 12. Like what? Why would I need to know that? So 41% of 78, we can change this to 0.41. And again, you don't have to, but I don't know, I think it's kind of weird to multiply it while it's a percent number. You could multiply them first and then move the decimal place over 2 spaces to the left. And you should get the same answer that way. But this way, we just go, okay, 0.41 times 78. And that equals 31.98. And there we go. That's the answer. All right. So I'm going to switch colors here. I know I'm switching colors a lot. I switch colors a lot on number 1 and number 2. I'm just going to kind of switch colors a little bit here. I'm just going to go one color at a time and kind of just try to keep things lively, but I'm not going to color code anymore. Just one color per 2 questions here, which is what I normally do, actually. 28% of means multiply. 63 is what? Okay, so I need 0.28 times 63, and that's 17.64. And that's it. That's the answer. 58%. Okay, so this is going to be, oh, you know what? Actually, this is a little bit reversed, so we'll slow down a bit on this one. So 58% of what is 63.4? So we do actually have to solve this one. That's 58%, which is 0.58. And I'll show you that you can actually, oh, forgot to put the 8 in there. You can actually leave that percent alone at first and then get the answer afterwards. So like if I do 63.4 divided by 0.58, which is 58% as a decimal, I get the answer right away, which is 109. Okay. Oh, also, I forgot they wanted us to round to the nearest tenth. So I forgot to do that on number 4, actually. So my bad on that one. This would actually be 32 because it would go, the 8 would round up the 9, but the 9 can't go up anymore without it being, 10. So this would actually end up being 32.0 for this one. That one was fine. It was already 3 decimal places. And then I forgot to do that on the other one too. So just a second. Forgive me for forgetting to round properly there. But we would get 109. Okay, cool. So what if we didn't though? What if we didn't divide by 58% as 0.58? Well, let's see. 63.4 divided by 58. That's a pretty small number. But now that's like a percent number. So if we wanted to change that to a decimal, we'd have to, well, move the decimal place over and write it as 0.58, which means we would need to multiply by 100. And this is why I don't like doing it this way, because it's more tricky, I think, to do it this way. If you divided 63.4 by 58%, just like the number 58, you'd get 1.09. And then you'd have to multiply by 100. But you might think like, oh, wait, why wouldn't I divide by 100? And the answer is because the percent's in the denominator. So you are, dividing by 100, but you're dividing by 100, right? So it's really kind of tricky and confusing, I think, to leave it as a percent. You can, but I don't recommend it. So it's just a lot easier if instead you were to say, okay, 63.4 divided by 0.58, and then get the answer, which is 109.3. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and change colors again. On to green. 1 is what percent of 52.6? Okay, so now it's a what percent question. We have to make sure we write it as a percent. This was exactly like we did on number 1 and 2. It's just structured a little bit differently, not in quite the same order. 52.6. Okay, so what is 1 divided by 52.6? It is we want to round to 3 decimal places, so let's round to 3 because that's equal to x, which then if we move the decimal place over twice, it would be 1.9%. Okay, when you go from decimal to percent, the decimal place goes to the right. Decimal to percent. One way to think about it maybe would be D for decimal, P for percent. D comes before P on the alphabet. So if you were to, list all of the alphabet letters out from left to right like you would read them, then that's the direction you would go. You'd go from left to right. So your decimal place goes from left to right. It goes to the right 2 spaces when you go from decimal to percent, and it does the reverse when you go from percent to decimal. If you go from percent to decimal, it goes to the left, just like the letters on the alphabet. Okay, that might be one way to help remember that. What percent of 38 is 15? Okay, so 38, 15 divided by 38. And it says what percent, so we need a percent, so 0.395. I have 0.3947. That rounds to 0.395. I'm rounding to 3 decimal places because I'm going to move it over 2 spaces. And that way it's actually rounded to 1 decimal place. Okay, that's what I would recommend. Now, if you get to a place where they say round to the nearest hundredth, then I would round to 4 decimal places if they're looking for a percent. If they're looking for a percent, round to 2 more decimal places than what they ask for, because you're going to have to move the decimal place over to the right for the final answer. Right? So 10th, 3 spaces, 100th, 4 spaces, 1000th, 5 spaces, I almost said 3 spaces. I can count. Yeah, and so on and so on, right? So 4% of 73 is what? Okay, 4% is 0.04. Okay? Anytime you get stuck with those single digit percents, I've seen a lot of people mess those up. They'll be like, oh, 4%, that's 0.4. But is it? Because what's 40%? Oh, 40% is also zero point 0.4. Right? So be really careful. It's really tempting to write single digit percents as like just point and then that number. No. No. Don't do that. It's 0.0 and then that number if it's a single digit percent number. Okay, don't forget to do that. So 4% is 0.04 times, of means times, 73 equals 2.92. And we're going to round to one decimal place, so 2.9. Okay, we round to one decimal place because we already have the percent in the problem. We are not solving for a percent, so we just round to one decimal place. We don't have to worry about that, like add 2 to it rule. That was only for number 8 because they're asking for the percent. Here they're asking for what? What? What are they selling? So here, what is 12% of 17.5? So 12%, that's 0.12, right? So we would divide both sides by 0.12. 0.12. 12% is 0.12, so these guys cancel. Okay, it's a little tricky trick there. 12% is 0.12, so when I divide 12% by 0.12, they cancel because they're the same number. So then I just have 17.5 divided by 0.12, and that's equal to a pretty big number, 145.8. And that is the answer for that. All right, let's look at the next one. So it's like a lighter green here. 79% of 67 miles is what? Okay, so here, notice there's units. What? I don't remember there being units until now. Yeah, there's units now. So if your teacher's not a stickler, then this doesn't matter. If your teacher is a stickler for things like this, then you want to make sure you include those units. So, don't forget. 79% is 0.79 times 67, and I get 52.93. I'm going to round to one decimal place, 52.9 miles. 79% of 67 miles is, well, it's a smaller amount of miles, right? So, like, if I said I went 100 miles, and I said, what's half of that, right? What's 50%? What's half of that? It's 50 miles, right? So we do want to include the units, technically speaking, but like I was saying before, if your teacher's not a stickler about it, then I guess it doesn't really matter too much. What is 59% of 14? Okay, 59%, that is 0.59 times 14, and I get 8.26. So 8.26 rounds up to 8.3 because the 6 moves the 2 up. Okay, we're on the second half here, and if you didn't already notice, I have been going a little bit faster here. There's not really anything that's new that's been happening, so we're going to just kind of continue to go here. I'm going to go just a little bit faster. They're starting to include units. That's really the only new thing since question 11, that is. So we're just going to kind of solve them out here and get the rest of these answers. Now, you can also look up these answers yourself. You can just Google the name of this worksheet, and it has the answers on it. All of these Kuta software worksheets have the answers in them. So that's pretty cool. We get 147.4 for the answer for that. Okay, what is 16%? Let's go ahead and change that to a decimal. 0.16, 16% of 43 minutes. Oh, I forgot to add the units here. Minutes. And we do 0.16 times 40. Oh, I put a 6. 43. There we go. 6.88. So that rounds to 6.9 minutes. All right, cool. And as we're starting to, round off this last half of this worksheet here, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but if you want a free guide on how to, not miss any math mistakes anymore, I have one. It's called the 5 math mistakes everyone makes and how to avoid them. It's a really long title, I know. But it's meant to do exactly that. It's meant to just help you with math and help you to do exactly what it promises to do, which is to not make any more math mistakes. So you can check that out. It's in the description below, or you can just go to myersmathematics.com and you'll get that free guide from me. It's 58.4%. We want to go from decimal to percent, so the decimal place goes to the right, a la derecha in Espanol. What is 98%, 0.9, sorry, that was a bad 0.9, of 130 inches? Okay. Oh, also, notice for 15, there were units. It was dollars, but we were looking for the percent. Percent, uh, percent of, or percent from, or just percents in general. They don't have units. Percents don't have units. Percents are like catalysts to get from one thing to another. They're like a car. Like you give a name to a, I don't know. Like you have an address for a house, but you don't have an address for a car, right? Like cars are meant to be moving. So cars don't have addresses. Houses have addresses. So the address would be kind of like maybe like a unit. So you have two different houses. You're going to go from one house to another. What are you going to do? You're going to take a car. So the car is the percent. It doesn't have any units to it. It's just a vehicle to get you from one place to another. Okay. So that's why 15 didn't have any units attached to it. Anyways, 16. So 0.9 times 130. 117 exactly, so there's no need to round. Okay. Also, I think I normally do this, but I also have a cool little like personality test, personality quiz. If you're into those sorts of things, I'll have that in the description below as well. It's like what kind of math personality do you have, and what kind of careers that could translate to. So if that kind of thing is something you like to do, like I do, I love personality quizzes, then go check that out too and see what kind of math personality you are. And if you like your math personality, then let me know in the comments what you were, and let me know how accurate that was. There's only 4 different ones. It's kind of like a Hogwarts house kind of thing. All right. What is 68% of 118 tons? Looks like it is 80.2 tons. All right. Oh, fun fact, there's like at least two different types of tons. There's like a US ton and a metric ton. And they're different amounts. They're not the same kind of ton. It's weird. Man, measuring stuff in different systems is annoying sometimes. What percent, all right, so what percent of 180.4 is 25.7? Okay, so then we just divide both sides. So we have 25.7 divided by 180.4, and I get 0.142. Could round to 3 decimal places because then that's going to be 14.2%. All right, I think we are almost done here. I think we've got 6 more. So as we start to round off the rest of this video here, I've already shown you the answers, but I'm showing you, the answers in real time as well. But I mean the answers that they have on the worksheet themselves. So if this video has been helpful for you, throw me a like, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff that people always tell you to do. It's, it's good for me, it's good for you. You get free math content. I get another sub. Everybody wins. So you should totally do it. 16 divided by 35%, aka 0.35, is 45.7, and the units are inches. All right. 90% of 54.4 hours is what? So actually, you can do this whole thing in the calculator. I don't need to write any of this out, actually. If I were to do this worksheet by myself without trying to teach it, I would just say, okay, 0.9, okay, of times 54.4 Ours is what? Okay, so there's nothing to solve. 48.96. 48.96. Those are tough ones to round. I'm going to write this out. So this is the intermediate answer. When this goes up, it makes 9 turn into 10. So that's why this goes up, right? So it's like this is 4, 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 plus, well, I mean this goes up to 10, right? So 9 goes up to 10. So that 9's gone. The 6 makes the 9 go up, so we're ignoring the 6. So that's why it ends up being 49.0, is because that 9 turns into a 10. Well, a 0.9 though, turning into a 10 really means it's not 10, it's 1. 0.9 turns into 1. That's the next highest thing up from 0.9 if you're counting by tenths. So that's why it turns into that. And that's why we keep the little 0.0 thing on there. That shows us that we did round to the 10th place and not to, the nearest whole number. Because if we rounded to the nearest whole number, well, it would still be 49, but it wouldn't be 49.0. So rounding can be a little tricky. Rounding can be. I feel like that's harder on this worksheet. That's the hardest thing about this worksheet, is the fact that rounding is not always easy. 140 feet is 97% of what? So we want to take 140, divide by 0.97. That is 144.3. Okay, and that's feet. And that is our answer. What is 170% of 97? This one is a little bit tricky because you might be thinking like, oh, what is 170%? That's such a big percent. Well, it is, but remember, if you go from percent to decimal, you're moving the decimal place to the left 2 spaces. You always move it 2 spaces. It wouldn't be 0.17. That's 17%. It wouldn't be, I don't know, 1.7 or I mean, it would be 1.7, but it wouldn't be, I don't know, 17 or anything like that. It's 1.7. 1.7 times 97. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because what is 170% of something? That's more than 100%. That means it's more. It's more than what we have, right? If you're like, oh, what's 200% of this amount? I don't know. I can't think of a number off the top of my head for some reason. Like, what's 200%? Well, 200% means you're doubling it. It means you're doubling whatever you have. So 170% is close to that, and we get 164.9 exactly. Still in tons. Still in tons. And that brings us to our last two here. So we're going to end off with some purple. What is 103%? So that's 1.03 of 127 tons. Right? So that's just a little bit more than what we already just had. So it makes sense that it's 1.03 times 127. 130.81, but it was, round to the nearest tenth. So tons. And last one. We are rounding this off. 120. Oh, you know what? Let's set this one up. This one we do have to solve, so I like to write it out if we have to solve it, so we can at least get the setup here of what. So we're going to have to divide both sides by 94%. This is 102. Forgot I already wrote 102. I wrote like 102, 102. 102,102. That's a big number. Divided by 0.94, and we get 108.5 hours. And that's X. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. And I already talked about everything else that goes with it. My awesome free guide, liking, subscribing, and that sort of thing. And I didn't mention clicking the bell for notifications, but I feel guilty about asking for that one because I never do that with any channels. Like I don't want to like have more pop-ups on my phone. So if you're like me, then maybe you appreciate that I didn't ask you to click the little bell for notifications. I mean, like I'm not going to stop you, but I don't ever do that for any other channels. So if you don't want to, I won't be offended, I promise. But anyways, hope this was helpful, and I'll see you again in another video real